3,
finding everything,
2,
and here we are. We're
1,
live.
and here we are. And I don't know if I'm ever going to get over it suddenly working like it's supposed to.
Well, you're not screaming this time, so that's a point in its favor. After 7 episodes,
I will
you're not
scream.
doing that.
I mean,
Hello, everybody.
I didn't put on my eyebrows. I don't have eyebrows. I don't have eyebrows or eyelashes.
We're just losing it. So before we lose it any further, thank you and welcome to Agatha Christie They Watched on Bill Peschel.
And I'm Teresa, who does not have eyebrows today.
Absolutely. But here we are. We're going to be talking about the Agatha Christie's Poirot episode, The Mysterious Affair at Styles, starring David Suchet.
And Hugh Fraser. And fortunately, the earrings will detract from the lack of eyebrows.
Okay, well, let's focus.
Focus?
We'll focus a little bit, okay?
That? Okay, focus. Focus.
We saw this last night. It's the 3rd time I've seen it, 2nd time for Teresa.
Yes, that's right, because you watched this decades. Oh God, it probably has been over 10 years when you did the review for. We're all getting older, dear. We can't help it.
We don't want to.
But yeah, you did the review. Let me tilt this so that. But you wrote a review of it for your annotated Agatha Christie she watched. But I didn't watch it because at the time I wasn't even editing you, and then I watched it, of course, for Agatha Christie she watched, and now we're watching it for the live stream. And, it really holds up well. They did a really, really good job.
Yeah, it was. Now, according to the wiki, Agatha Christie wiki, it's the debut episode of the 3rd series, although Suchet says it came on at the end of the 2nd series. But they had been doing Poirot for about 18 episodes or so. So this was the perfect time for them to go back to the beginning. This is one of 3 episodes that they did not set in the mid to late 30s.
Yeah, this has the chocolate box.
The chocolate box.
And
the last one. Curtain. That's right.
Curtain, because everybody's old.
Because everybody's old
right now, and we don't have eyebrows.
So this is set back in the middle of the war, somewhere around 1915, 1916. And
it is before the Americans entered the war, because Arthur Hastings, Captain Hastings, although he's a lieutenant at this point,
right.
Lieutenant Hastings, love that pronunciation because nobody in the U.S. Navy says lieutenant, but Lieutenant Hastings mentioned specifically at one of the dinners. I think this might be, I can't remember now if this is before Mrs. Inglethorpe dies in agony or afterward, that the Americans are coming over. They're sending troops over.
Yeah.
So this gives you almost a pinpoint date. But they had to go back in time and give us the origin story for Hastings and Jap and for Poirot and how they all met. And this is not exactly when Jap met Poirot. I don't think there was any formal introduction.
Because they met before, because Jap knew Poirot before they met in Styles St. Mary, because he mentions a particular case that they worked on and that affair in Antwerp in which Poirot showed his brilliance to him.
Yes, and the same thing with Hastings. He says, I met Poirot when I was over in Brussels I was duck shooting, and my gun happened to be the same one that was used as the weapon, the murder weapon. And, of course, he's a foreigner. And so obviously he must be guilty. And Poirot cleared him. And we never know what that story is. And I am sure that AO3 right now has got at least 15 answers to that question, just like the one with Jap. But this is... let me go back to the beginning again. So this is the opening story. This is the origin story. And who does this? Is it London?
This is London Weekend
TV. They were doing it at the time.
Yep.
They really handled the opening well, because you don't get the usual Poirot opening that you have
with
become
the theme
used
music.
to with the theme music. Instead, you just start with old-timey cars and very different clothes.
It's a London street setting to show you there's troops marching. There's somebody selling
war bonds.
Well, they're selling hot food. They were selling the typical British food with mash. Meat pies and mash. It's a very old style. You're in the Edwardian period.
Yes, you are in a different period. It is not 1935.
Right.
And they did a really good job setting up all of the backdrop. All throughout this episode, you are seeing 2 or 3 young women struggling with something that some teenage boy could have managed on his
lifting
own.
bags into a wagon,
Yeah,
for
lifting
example.
bags of grain.
They're conductors, they're
Drivers,
working at the train station.
They're doing everything. The women are doing every single job because all the men are fighting. Anybody of fighting age who is not more important at home is off in the trenches.
Yep.
And we start, Poirot doesn't even come on scene for, I see
the first 11 minutes.
Yeah, no Poirot for the first 11 minutes. And instead what you get is the setup for the Cavendish family. John.
Well, before that, though, because Hastings is in the hospital, he's recovering from a wound, and they're showing footage.
With all these other
newsreel footage, all these wounded soldiers
being forced to relive the trauma of the trenches. And you think, what scientist thought this was a good idea? But of course, we have to follow the science.
Well, it may have had very good reasons to it, and also because this is what's actually happened. They don't want to torture. Well, the point, though, and one of the points David Suchet mentioned in Poirot and Me, his wonderful memoir,
which
is
if you're a fan, you should read.
They had debate as to whether or not they could show the footage. Apparently, British television in 1990 had various rules about what you can and can't show, and they were showing they were showing actual newsreel footage of the fighting, and you see men dying. You see men, they're running, and all of a sudden they drop. You don't see blood, of course. This is silent movie footage,
and it's black and white.
But still, you're going to see, explosions. You're going to see men falling and not getting up, and I think. And I know for a fact that some of it really did exist. They really did have cameras on the battlefield. Some of it might have been, well, like when the tank, you're seeing the tank coming towards the camera and running over it, then clearly that was,
that may have
from
been
behind the lines.
That may have been movie. That may have been movie magic from somewhere later.
There was some concern over that. So they had to get that cleared. But this starts cold like a movie, and you get that feeling throughout because you get incidents and you get fade to black. Incidents happen, they fade to black. You don't get that obvious when you're watching a TV episode, even as a movie where
I just think of Futurama, that wonderful opening episode where Leela is like, oh, if only I had a few minutes to think, and they break to the commercial and she comes back and said, wow, I came up with the idea. And you get the little lift in the music and that says, hey, commercial time coming,
get ready to go to the bathroom. Time to do that. And this was beautifully shot. I mean, it's beautifully composed scenes, and they really, I think from my research for doing Agatha Christie, the annotated version, because I looked into what was electrification like, because at Styles in the mansion they were using candles in the evening.
Gas lamps. They had gas lamps. Not gas. I'm saying the wrong word.
Kerosene
lamps. They were using kerosene lamps. And you actually see Mrs. Inglethorpe tells Cynthia, the poor relation who is boarding with them, to light her oil lamp, because Mrs. Inglethorpe is not going to light a lamp herself. That is what servants and poor relations are for. And so you see Cynthia going over to the mantelpiece. She pulls a spill, and this is important. She pulls the spill out of the spills vase, lights it on the fire, sets the kerosene wick, lights the flame, and sets the glass chimney in place. And this is something that everybody did. And when you were looking at that crystal clear glass chimney, remember, some housemaid every morning got to collect them all and hand wash them and put them back, because nothing builds up soot like a glass chimney on a kerosene lamp. And that's why we all love electricity so much. But these are rich people. These are wealthy, well-off people. Even if they are profligate with their money, they don't have electricity. They are using candles and kerosene lamps.
At about that time, only about 30% of Britain was electrified, and those were in the big cities. So you go out into the country, like, of course, your country house at Styles St. Mary, you're going to be operating by candlelight, fires, and a spills vase is a vase that contains rolled up pieces of paper. They make anything that could be used to transfer fire.
Yeah, and a spills vase let you use up scrap scrap paper. So notes, old love letters, compromising letters, rolled up pieces of newspaper. And everybody had a spills vase. And of course, that's one of those things. This is why we annotated the book, because of course, our kids are reading this and they're saying, what is a spills vase? It's full of, you spill it out on the floor. And I don't know why they call it spills. Did you ever find out why they call them spills?
I'm not sure either, to be honest. Maybe a spoils, because spoils is something that is left over from a consumption of things, and you still use it.
Yeah, it's very recycly. This is very, very
it is recycled.
Is extremely recycling,
and it's very convenient as well, because housemates can light a fire and then take that fire into the next room and light it as well. But you have to have
a long, stiff piece of paper for this, and it has to be convenient, and it has to already be rolled up. And the spills vase is, of course, a critical clue. So that's why you see Cynthia lighting lighting the kerosene lamp with the spills vase, and then you see Poirot later rearranging, lining up the
objects on the mantelpiece.
And he is really OCD in this episode, far more so than you see anywhere else. I mean, to the point of parody. But I look at it, I thought, well, he's really overdoing it. But at the same time, I'm thinking, he has just refugeed over from England, and he is adapting to a violently different culture. Violent isn't the right word. Radically different culture. He's learning a new language. He's learning everything is different from what he was used to in Belgium. And even though he was cosmopolitan in Belgium, he is some refugee hick in the wilderness of Britain, and he is there on sufferance, and everything is different, and he doesn't know if he'll ever go home again. But we don't know anything about his family, friends. They may be dead. I mean, he and everyone else is very traumatized. And when you look at his telling the little shop owner, telling her that she needs to rearrange her goods to coordinate with where in the world they came from. And you're seeing a man who is trying to control what he can no longer control. He is almost adrift, and he is just clinging to anything that he can to give him. You can tell I didn't sleep well last night. What am I trying to say?
A sense of stability.
Yes, thank you.
Stability and order. He's trying to recreate that in his life. And there are numerous scenes showing, because all this is based, first of all, there's a lot of things to cover. This was published in 1920. Agatha Christie wrote it around 1915, 1916.
When she was a dispenser and a ward nurse in a hospital in Torquay.
A lot of her early experiences show up in this book, and it's a very Victorian book. There's numerous phrases like, if you consult your inclination, or if you're scraping acquaintance. This is not the Agatha of later books, and boy, that really gets washed out. There you go. No, I'm very proud of this cover, by the way, because I actually created this cover, and I tinted the water. I printed out the label.
We found a fabulous bottle with a glass logo at the top of it. We found a fabulous bottle.
And I think it was a Jack Daniel's sauce. It was a Jack Daniel's sauce, like they were doing barbecue sauce, because you can still see a little bit of it up here.
But it looked really good in the photograph.
Oh, it looked fabulous. I've still got the bottle. I should have brought out the bottle for it. It goes in the archives when we convert this house into a museum after I'm gone. No ego problems here, folks.
Indeed.
But the thing is, though, this is her first published novel. She has been writing before that, and in fact, there was another novel she did, a juvenilia piece that's never been published.
Snows Upon the Desert. And if you get my, if you buy
the International,
which is hiding behind my head
there.
She started actually writing in about between 1901 and 1907. And if anybody can pin down the exact date, it is Dr. John Curran, because he is such an expert on her writing.
Or Mark Aldrich.
Or Mark Aldrich would probably be able to pin it down
He's probably read it, because he's been in the family archives.
Yeah, they both read it, I'm sure. But she started writing early, really, really early. And so she was actually... This isn't actually her first piece of writing. She probably had a lot. They tell you these days you should have 1 million words, that you write on your computer before you ever submit anything. And I don't know how much she had written, but she wrote a lot. She wrote plays, she wrote short stories, she wrote her novel, she wrote poems. And so she had a fairly good grasp of writing before she sat down to do
Oh yeah,
styles,
and she
she
read
had
a
time
lot
to think
too.
about it. And she took, I think at one point she took a break and spent 2 weeks on the at a hotel on the
She
moors. We visited that hotel when we were in England.
That's right. It's on Dartmoor. She had gotten halfway
So
through the
exciting.
book and she had basically hit a wall and she wasn't quite sure what to do. And her mother suggested taking a break from the dispensary where she was working and learning about poisons, go off to this hotel in Dartmoor. And they were living in Torquay, so it wasn't that far to go. And she spent 2 weeks in the hotel. She spent the day walking the moors and
Thinking about
talking
her
about the
plot,
story,
talking to herself about the story.
and then coming back and writing.
And you can visit this
And you can
hotel.
visit the hotel, and they
Yeah.
have a little Agatha Christie shrine with her books as well.
Yeah,
Uh,
Alex Graham of
Devon
Devon
Tours.
Tours took us there, and if you ever need to drive anywhere around in Devon, ask Alex Graham to do it for you
Oh, he's a
because
great
he'll
tour
keep you
driver.
safe. He's a great tour
And
great tour guide, and he kept us from driving on English roads, and really that's all you need to say. He kept us and everyone else safe.
but he's very entertaining.
Wonderful
Alex
guy.
Graham with an E on the end, I believe. If you look, Alex Graham we'll include a link in the description.
Unique Devon Tours. That was it. Unique Devon Tours. And he took us to that hotel. And so we were actually in the same hotel that Agatha used when she worked on.
And it still
really
looked pretty
in-depth
much the
styles,
same.
yeah.
It looks like they hadn't modernized it. But the point, though, her first book, there's lots of references to one of the characters works at a dispensary. Of course, she used her
That's
knowledge.
Cynthia.
That's Cynthia. She used her knowledge of poisons, and in fact, the end of this. And I'm afraid we're going to go into spoilers, and we never talk about this, but we do spoil. We do try to. We need to spoil things in the course of our discussion.
Sometimes we have to.
It uses an obscure to anybody other than chemists, the solution to how Mrs. Inglethorpe was poisoned. And they kind of fell down in this because they didn't mention at the beginning that she takes a tonic that contains strychnine.
Yeah, it does show up a little bit later in the film, but it isn't spelled out in words of one syllable for us dummies like me, that she takes this tonic with strychnine, and boy, our kids had something to say about that when we annotated. And she also takes a sleeping powder. And the thing is with the sleeping powder, and this was not spelled out in the film, it may have been spelled out in the text, I can't remember, but she takes a bromide sleeping powder occasionally. And she had run out of sleeping powder, because Dorcas tells us this, at about the same time that she had run out of the tonic. And if you were a chemist like Agatha was in the dispensary, you learn that pouring the bromide sleeping powder, and that's where it came from. If you pour the bromide sleeping powder into the bottle of tonic, all the strychnine, which is a mild stimulant, and that's why people take it, and why you would take it before you go to bed is totally beyond me. But
it's similar to caffeine in its effect. So if you have a caffeine buzz, you're actually getting almost like a strychnine buzz, only strychnine's a lot more effective in killing you.
Although if you drink enough caffeine in a short enough period of time, you too can end up in the ER, making everyone around you very excited as they try to bring you down from your caffeine overdose. It is possible.
But anyway, it accumulates at the bottom of the bottle.
And the little crystals, transparent, they accumulate at the bottom. And then when you slug that last dose of tonic, you drink it all the strychnine at once.
Mm-hmm.
And that poisons you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where you can see that this particular novel, you can see that Agatha is already thinking seriously about mystery tropes because she has the hidden couple.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say, again, I think the film did this really, really well. Evie Howard in her histrionics about Mr. Inglethorpe.
Mr. Inglethorpe married Mrs. Inglethorpe. This is the wrong way to say it because Mrs. Inglethorpe was like
Mrs. Cavendish. She's a woman in her 60s.
Yeah, Cavendish. That's right. And his name is Alfred Inglethorpe. Okay, getting the names right is important.
And John Cavendish is in the air, and this is again something you don't necessarily consider in modern day. John and Lawrence Cavendish are brothers. Their father married their mother, and then their mother died at some point, and then their father remarried Emily Rose, whatever her last name was, and she became Mrs. Cavendish. She did not produce more children, and maybe she was too old, who knows, but she did not produce more children, so they do not have half brothers and sisters, but she is their stepmother.
Mm-hmm.
And then their father dies, and apparently nobody in the Cavendish side of the family could handle money, but Emily Rose Cavendish could, and she had her own fortune. And then sometime later, her dear friend Evie introduced her to a second cousin, Alfred Inglethorpe, who was 20 years younger, and he moved in, and he swept her off her feet.
Yep.
You're still beautiful, you're still wonderful, you're still desirable.
Let me
All
take
of those
care of
words
you.
that as these 65-year-old women want to hear from some hunky
45-year-old man.
40, more like 40, I would say.
That's right.
But he's still younger,
Yep.
and Evie is very upset. This is apparently not what she had expected, and she just doesn't like it. And the Cavendish brothers
don't
really
like it
don't
because they're
like
afraid
it.
she's going to make a will. In fact, she has a will already in place that awards him the money, and John gets the house. He gets the house that needs money for repairs, but no money to do it with. And no wonder he's concerned.
He gets the money pit, but not the money to maintain money.
That's right.
Pit.
And this is the start of the Agatha trope of the family in the big house and what money does, because you'll see.
They are all worried about money.
You'll
and
see it like Hercule Poirot's Christmas at Crooked House. There's always a dominating character who controls everybody else with their money. And she doesn't have it in this case, not as much as overtly as in like Hercule Poirot's Christmas, where these people cannot leave the house and go on their own without failing. They need the money.
Yeah, and they don't want to risk it on their own. They don't want to be poor.
So it's a first pass on this particular trope.
And the I hate this one.
That's all right. But anyway, it's a hot house, in other words, because we have John Cavendish, the elder brother, who is also having an affair, supposedly an affair with Mrs. Rakes, the war widow down the lane.
The hot redhead.
And that's another Agatha trope. She loves redheads in her books.
And it sure looked like an affair to me. They were holding hands when Poirot knocks on the door, and he disappears out the back door, so nobody knows exactly what it is that he's doing. And you think, maybe Mary, his wife, has a really good reason to be jealous.
And Mary is jealous.
She's a very jealous woman, and some of what happens in the novel is because of her jealousy. Some of the craziness in the middle of the night when everything happens all at once is because of Mary's jealousy. And the film covered that, I think, fairly well. What they didn't cover well was because the character was removed, that Mary may have been having an affair with somebody in the village on her own. And also, what exactly was the relationship between John Cavendish and Mrs. Rakes? And they looked like they were pretty good friends, but how close were they?
Yeah, and we just don't know. We just don't know. And then maybe Agatha didn't really want to try to go there because it's her first book and she's already has enough going on. Another character is Cynthia Murdoch, who is the paid companion.
No, Cynthia Murdoch is the poor relation.
The poor relation. That's right.
She is Mary Cavendish is the land girl. She's the one actually working on the farm. And Cynthia is the poor relation, and she's living there with them. And she has a very heartfelt scene with Hastings. She has no place to go. After
Mrs. Thinglethorpe dies, she has to wonder what's going to happen to herself.
Yeah, because she has, she's genteelly brought up, which means she doesn't really have a useful education. So what is she going to do other than become a paid companion or a governess, or go out there and see how she can do on the street, walking the streets of London, or being poor? She is stuck. She has no place else to go. She's working in the dispensary, and I guess she could continue working in the dispensary and hope that they pay her. But I would suspect a lot of the dispensary people were volunteers, because money was so tight at every single level.
But she has this fun scene there, and this is out of the book. She's sitting down with Hastings, and again we get this glimpse of Hastings as this lovelorn romantic, because she's spilling her heart out to him, and oh my gosh, what am I going to do? And he has already been attracted to her, and he finally says, Marry
Marry
me,
me.
marry
And
me. And
he
what
could do a lot worse than Cynthia Murdoch. She's a very nice young woman, a clever, hardworking, sensible young woman.
but
And he
what's
could have done a lot worse than Cynthia Murdoch. And you can almost see, Cynthia, again, they only had an hour and 43 minutes. And Cynthia complains about Mary's jealousy. And you think, why is Mary jealous? And then, of course, it's because Cynthia is a pretty unmarried young woman in the household, and John must be sniffing after her.
Mhm.
Whether he is or not.
Well, there's no indication of that happening. I mean, he's got
there's
enough on his plate with
absolutely
Mrs.
none.
Rakes.
Yeah, Mrs. Rakes
He's
is
not
keeping his hands full.
juggling multiple. And as a matter of fact, Cynthia does get married in the end. But
to Lawrence,
to Lawrence,
his brother, and Lawrence is again an interesting character because he's trained as a medical doctor, but the only reason he is being a doctor right now at the hospital is because he is trained, not because he really wanted to be a doctor forever and ever. What he really wants to be is a writer.
He's
and
a poet, even worse.
Yeah, so Hastings actually asks about it, and John rolls his eyes and says, well, he's had a few bits and pieces published here and there. And Lawrence Cavendish, and I didn't realize this until we saw this film again, that Lawrence Cavendish is the first in a long line of wannabe writers who talk about their writing, but they don't actually produce anything the way Agatha herself, did. And you wonder how many nice young men or nice young women from good families like to talk about their writing, but they never actually produce writing. Did she see that? Because she was a very observant woman, and maybe she knew people like that.
Remember though, this is kind of like the first of the feckless brothers, because in her own family, they had a brother who was charming and handsome and cannot hold a job to save himself, and they finally sent him off to Africa. He joined the military. He was a remittance man, but I think he joined the military. He was in East Africa during World War I, and then afterwards he decided he wanted to set up a ferry boat on, I think, Victoria, Lake Victoria, and they advanced him money, and he used it to make this wonderful sailor suit for him, so he would be the captain. And again, this project never went off the ground. I think they sold the boat to the British Army because but he was that feckless kind of guy. He was always going to need to be supported, and this is kind of like a prototype in Lawrence Cavendish. He's not quite as useless, but again, he trained to be a doctor, but he's not going to be a doctor, and he wants to be a poet.
And you can see bits of Lawrence Cavendish eventually in Ordeal by Innocence with Leo Argyle, except Leo Argyle is absolutely a total waste of space from word one, and nobody will ever read his worthless books. And but Lawrence isn't that bad, but you could see This is a beginning. If you read everything Agatha wrote in date order from the very beginning all the way to the end, you can see that she has certain characters that she returns to, and one of them is the useless man.
Yep.
Absolutely. And when I think about it, she has very few absolutely useless women. Like, she has useless men. And then Monty must have really made a big impression on her.
That's right. Monty Miller. She was Agatha Miller, the Miller family.
Yes.
But I do want to finish up the point, though, with Cynthia and Hastings, because, again, you think about, this is an author, Agatha Christie, and you have this romantic scene, which he says, marry me. And I don't know if a lot of authors would do what Agatha had Cynthia do, which is bust out laughing at him in his face and saying, oh, thank you so much. You made my day so much. She's still under this whole trauma about what to do with her life, but Hastings distracted her.
And she's sweet on Lawrence.
And
she is sweet on Lawrence. And it doesn't really come out in how the actors are portraying it, but she is sweet on Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
And she wants Lawrence to ask her to marry him.
Yeah. And that's something that comes out at the end, but that one moment is just, it's perfect because it's cruel, and we all laugh and have a good time. And Hastings is just so lovely. He's so crushed. He's just like, oh my God. And that's, again, this episode, this is one of your highly rated episodes. I have to look. I forgot to look up in the back how you rated it, but at least 4.5 poison bottles.
Yeah, because they really did a good job with this. And I also, before we finish, because I see that we're heading towards 20? Half an hour, and we do have kind of like a half. We do want to try to keep these not ramble on for hours. We've got other things to do, and
so do you, folks.
And so
Let's
do
be
you.
honest about this.
But one of the things Agatha did in this novel, again, this is their first published novel, but not her first writing by a long stretch. But there were two things that you may have heard about. One is that when she did sell the book, the copy editor at the Bodley Head
God.
insisted on misspelling cocoa to the point where she brought in tins of cocoa into the office to say, your copy editor is spelling this word wrong. But they went with the copy editor and not with the author, even though it was obvious to everyone how you were supposed to spell the word cocoa.
C-O-C-O, not C-O-C-O-A.
And it made Agatha look dumb in print, and she resented that for her entire life, and I can understand why.
Well, it was the first chink in the Bodley Head, which is the name of the publisher before she went to Harper, later HarperCollins now. It was one of the first indication they didn't back up the author. And this is part of Agatha's journey from being what she saw herself as a housewife
who wrote to a professional. And the other thing is that, and this is, I think, came out of an editor at the Bodley Head. They didn't like how she handled the courtroom scene. And because
at the end of the novel, Poirot is testifying at trial and describing what actually happened.
Yeah. And they said, this isn't going to fly. And she went back home and rewrote it. And this editorial remark was correct. And this is how she developed the trope that is named after Hercule, the Poirot, and every detective ever since in the entire world loves to do the Poirot, and that's where you gather everybody together in the drawing room, and you tell them, this is what happened, and this is,
and you go through
step by step,
and imply everybody could be the murderer, so they all have that moment to react.
And then you did it. You did it.
If you remember, the 1980 Mirror cracked. That's how it opened. It opened with the movie.
Oh, that's right. That's right. The fake movie within a movie. And you were seeing the detective in the drawing room telling everybody who did it, just like Jessica Fletcher would do it later on. And if you ever watch the 1980 Mirror Crack with Angela Lansbury, you will see the proto Jessica Fletcher in the what comes after that scene. There is Jessica Fletcher on the screen, even though her name is Miss Marple. But anyway, getting back to the Poirot, you see the Poirot all kinds of places. Do you remember it was in that Fable comic book series where Bigby Wolf, and he's actually talking about, I get to do the Poirot. I get to do this. I want to do this. Everybody wants to do this.
Yeah, this is part of a book I'm writing called Kill Like Christie, which is a list of all the tropes that you find that mystery writers use to plant clues, misdirect, do everything. And I had to name that the Poirot. So it's
because of course
really
it's
my
the
ego
Poirot.
again.
It is the Poirot.
She was the first one that did that.
She came up with this because it allowed her to elide a courtroom scene, which she didn't know enough about to write correctly. Later on, she got pretty good at writing courtroom scenes. And all you have to do is watch Witness for the Prosecution to see that she really knew how to write a courtroom scene.
Again, this is part of the evolution of a writer.
And there was just so much to like about this, I know David Suchet fussed in his memoir that when Hastings comes racing into the village to find him, rap
on Poirot's door where he's living,
opening the
and
window,
he opens the upstairs
and his
window.
hair is a little mussed, and I'm thinking, you're looking at a man who is just like inches away from.
But according to Suchet, he thought, no, Poirot would always be in control, and he would stop and comb his hair first. And Suchet writes in his memoir that every time he looks at that scene, he winces a little. Actors, what can you say? That he didn't make the right choice, but it didn't bother. It doesn't bother us. But at the same time, Poirot really is different.
Yes,
and I really understand where he's coming from with that.
And, and another thing they did really well is they youthened everybody. They youthened Hugh Fraser. They youthened David Suchet. And wow, it's a really good film. And if you want to watch you can watch this one of two ways. The Mysterious Affair at Styles. You can, if you have not yet watched all of the Poirots, you can either watch them in the order in which they were filmed, bang, 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 or you can watch this one out of sequence and then go back to The Adventure of the Clapham Cook, which also introduces Poirot and Hastings and Inspector Japp and Miss Lemon. Miss Lemon, of course, does not appear in this film.
Yeah.
So you can actually choose if you want to start with the origin story or if you want to watch them in the order in which they were filmed, and then you eventually get Poirot and Hastings' origin story.
Yep.
But it's totally worth your time. This is just a wonderful episode.
Well, let me we'll wrap it up, because I'm reminded that when doing my research on Agatha Christie and the book, she got very good reviews for this right out of the gate, which is I think very telling. It's already clear she is going to be someone worth watching.
She is more. She is a better writer than the typical crowd that you get published, you write a few books, and then within 10 years you've stopped writing and nobody has any idea who you are.
Yep.
You just disappear.
Yeah.
And she, right from the starting gate, she caught people's attention.
It was reviewed in the New York Times back when there were dozens of newspapers in New York City, and the New York Times was just another one of them. And it said, although this may be the first published book of Miss Agatha Christie, she betrays the cunning of an old hand.
And isn't that wonderful?
I mean, any writer would kill to get a review like that.
Yep. And do we have anything else to say? Because then I want to, if we
why don't we
then
just go on to what are we going to do next?
Okay. We are not going to be live streaming or watching a film next week on Wednesday, looking at the calendar over here, Wednesday,
the 22nd.
The 22nd.
Yep.
So Wednesday the 22nd, we would normally watch the next film.
We got family
Thursday,
coming.
But my 87-year-old mother is coming to Hershey, and she is more important, so that's what we are doing. We're taking a break for a week, and that will give you all time to go down to your interlibrary loan or go to Amazon Prime or however, and find the Les Petites version of The Mysterious Affair at Styles, which we have seen a couple of times. And Les Petites is very, very uneven in their filming. I mean, sometimes it's just really dopey. This one is weird and creepy and strange and involves the freshly squeezed blood of children and surrogate pregnancies. And
it is bonkers.
It is absolutely bonkers. And yet there is the plot that you see in Styles, the basic core with the hidden couple and the older woman being murdered. Oh, and there's cat murder. Be warned that Les Petites is not afraid of kitty carnage.
Mm-hmm.
There is a kitty dies so that to poison to provide a clue. And it is so different from this film, and yet it follows the plot the same way. So look for Wednesday the 29th of October, and then Thursday the 30th of October, look for the Les Petites Morettes version of The Mysterious Affair at Styles. And it is so fun. It is so crazy. It is so crazy. And that's what we'll be doing next week. And then after that, the Hungarian Styles. The Hungarian Styles, which is like nothing you have ever seen before in your life, and you will have to watch it 3 times in order to. The first time is such a barrage of imagery, you don't know what you're seeing. The second time, you start getting a feel for it. And then the third time, you can say, oh my God, no matter what I'm seeing on screen, this is utterly faithful to the text. And
it's on YouTube. It should still be on YouTube. I'm going to have to look it up, and I'll drop a link in the description below.
But that's what we're going to be doing. And thanks again so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
And we'll see you on Thursday. Morning.
Yeah, Thursday the
30th at 11:30 when we do the Les Petites version of The Mysterious Affair at Styles.
Okay.
And so thanks again for joining us. And are we done?
I think we're done. Like, share, and subscribe.
Yes. Oh, yes. Follow us on Instagram. We're on Instagram.
Peschel Press.
Yes. Follow us on Instagram and like, share, and subscribe and all of the other things. We would appreciate that.
Okay. Right. Bye-bye.
Bye.